Salvete, and welcome to Magister Peace Theater. Last time we heard the story of how Romulus and Remus avenged the expulsion of their grandfather Numitor from the throne, killed Amulius, their great uncle, and restored Numitor to king of Alba Longa. This time we pick up with the story of Romulus and Remus after that, beginning with the founding of the city of Rome itself, and concluding with the death of Romulus. Enjoy. Romulus and Remus found a city. After a little time, the two brothers thought they would build a city on Palatine Hill, where the she-wolf had nursed them. So they went to the hill and selected a site. Then they began to talk of a name for their city. "I'll be king and give the new city my name," said Romulus. "No," cried Remus, "I'll be the king and name the city after myself. I have just as much right as you have." So the brothers argued for a while, but at last they agreed to settle the matter in this way. At midnight, Romulus was to stand on Palatine Hill, and Remus was to stand on another hill a short distance off. Then they were to ask the gods to show them a sign of favor in the sky. And the first, who should see anything very remarkable, was to name the new city and be its king. So they went to watch, but nothing appeared until sunrise of the second day, when Remus saw 6 great vultures flying across the sky from north to south. He ran swiftly to Palatine Hill and told Romulus of what he had seen. But just then, 12 vultures, one after another, flew high over the head of Romulus in an almost unbroken line and were soon lost to view. Then Romulus claimed that he had the favor of the gods, as more birds had appeared to him. But Remus claimed that the gods favored him, as the birds had appeared to him first. Romulus asked the opinion of some of his friends, and as they all agreed that he was right in his claim, he paid no further attention to Remus, but began to lay out the new city. He gave it the name of Roma, or Rome, after himself. With a plow, he marked out the space on Palatine Hill and along the banks of the Tiber, and he built a low wall round about to protect the city from invaders. One day, while the work was going on, Remus came by in a very bitter mood. He was still angry with Romulus. He laughed scornfully at the little wall and said to his brother, "Shall such a defense as this keep your city? It may prevent children from getting in, but not men, for they can jump over it." So saying, Remus put his hands on the wall and sprang over it to show that his words were true. Romulus, in a sudden outburst of rage, struck him on the head with a spade and instantly killed him, at the same time crying out, "So perish anyone who shall hereafter attempt to leap over my wall." Then Romulus continued his work. While he was building his wall, he also built some houses. The first houses were nothing more than wood huts covered with mud and straw. But in course of time, the Romans had houses of stone, and they built fine temples and theaters and streets and squares, and at last Rome became the greatest and grandest city in the whole world. Romulus and the capture of the Sabine women. Romulus founded Rome in the year 753 BC. After he had built his city, he had some difficulty in getting people to live in it. He had only a few followers and was not able to obtain any more. He decided, therefore, to make Rome a place of refuge to which people who had got into trouble in other countries might come for safety. And so when those who had committed crime in other places and had to flee to escape punishment found out that Romulus would give them a refuge, they came in large numbers to his city. People also came who had been driven from home by enemies, or had run away for one reason or another. It was not long, therefore, until Rome was full of men. There were men from many different tribes and countries. Thus the Roman nation began, and for years it steadily grew and prospered. But the Romans were much troubled about one thing. A great many of them had no wives, and they could not get any, because the women of the neighboring tribes would not marry them, for the Romans had a bad name. Romulus was very anxious that his people should have good wives, but how they should get them greatly puzzled him for a long time. At last, he hit upon a plan and began at once to carry it out. He sent messengers to the cities all around to announce that on a certain day a great festival in honor of the god Jupiter would be held on the plain in front of Rome. There were to be games, combats, horse racing, and other sports. The people were invited to attend the festival and also to take part in the contests for the prizes. When the festival day came, a multitude of men and women from far and near assembled before the walls of Rome. Hundreds of pretty girls were there in fine dresses. A great many came from the Sabine tribe. This was a tribe of warriors that lived on a mountain near Rome. Suddenly, Romulus blew a loud blast upon a horn. Then, quick as a flash, the Romans seized the girls and bore them off to Rome. Tarpeia and the Battle of the Sabines. The Sabines were greatly enraged by the seizure of their women, and their king, Titus Tatius, raised a large army and at once began a war against the Romans. The war went on for 3 years, but the Sabines were so strong that Romulus could not defeat them in the field. He therefore withdrew his army into the city. King Tatius quickly marched after him, resolved to take Rome or perish in the attempt. Now Romulus had erected a strong fortress on a hill near the Palatine to keep invaders from Rome. The hill was called the Saturnian Hill, and the fortress was in charge of a brave Roman captain who had a daughter named Tarpeia. When the Sabines reached this fortress, they could go no farther. They marched up and down, seeking for a spot where they might force an entrance, but they could find none. There was a small barred gate in the fortress, and through this gate, Tarpeia came out to get water. King Tatius saw her. He at once stepped forward and said, "Fair maiden, open the gate and let us in. If you do, you shall have for your reward anything you ask." Tarpeia was gazing with admiration at the bracelets of gold which the Sabines wore on their arms. "I will open the gate," said she, "if you will give me some of those things which your soldiers wear upon their arms." King Tatius agreed, and Tarpeia opened the gate. As the Sabines strode past the silly maiden, each threw at her not his bracelet, but his shield. The shield then used was round or oblong and made of bronze, or of wickerwork or oxhide, covered with metal plates. It had 2 handles at the back, and the soldier held it with his left hand and arm so that he could move it up or down to save his head or his chest from blows. Tarpeia stood in amazement as the heavy shields began to pile up around her. One struck her, and then another and another. At last, she fell to the ground and was soon crushed to death. When the soldiers saw that Tarpeia was dead, they took up the shields they had thrown at her. Then they hurled her body from the top of a great rock that was near the gate she had opened. The rock was afterwards known as the Tarpeian Rock. And for hundreds of years, the punishment for traitors in Rome was to be thrown from this rock. As soon as they passed the fortress, the Sabines ran down the Saturnian hill to make an attack on Rome. But Romulus and his band of warriors bravely came out of the city to drive back the enemy. The two forces met in the valley, and then a fierce battle began. But while they were fighting, a crowd of excited women came running from the city. They were the Sabine women whom the Romans had carried off. Some of them had their infants in their arms, and they rushed between the lines of soldiers and begged that the fight should stop. "Do not fight any more for us," they said to their fathers and brothers. "We love the Romans we have married. They've been good to us, and we don't wish to leave them." Of course, this settled the matter. Romulus had a talk with King Tatius, and they agreed not to fight any more. They also agreed that the two nations should be as one. They joined their governments and their armies, and each of the kings had equal power.
The end of Romulus.
Soon afterwards, King Tatius died. Then Romulus ruled alone for nearly 40 years. He was a wise and just king and did a great deal of good for his people. He established a body called the Senate to help him in important affairs of government. It was called the Senate from the Latin word senex, the Latin word for an old man. It was formed of the chiefs or the old men of the earliest settlers in Rome. The descendants of those settlers were called patricians or fathers, from the Latin word pater, father. They were the nobles or upper class in Rome. The ordinary citizens were called plebeians, from plebs, the Latin word for a common person. Romulus took care to train up the young Romans to be good soldiers. Outside the city, along the bank of the Tiber, there was a great plain which in later times was called Campus Martius, or Field of Mars. Here the Roman soldiers were drilled. They were taught how to use the spear and the javelin and the sword and the shield. They were also exercised in running and jumping and wrestling and swimming and carrying heavy loads. Thus the young men were made fit to bear the hardships of war and to fight and win battles for their country. It is related that in his old age, Romulus suddenly disappeared from the earth. He called his people together on a great field one day, and while he was speaking to them, a violent storm came on. The rain fell in torrents, and the lightning and thunder were so terrible that the people fled to their homes. When the storm was over, the people went back to the field, but Romulus was nowhere to be found. Then it was said that his father, the god Mars, had taken him up to the clouds in a golden chariot. Next morning, at early dawn, a Roman citizen named Julius saw a figure descending from the heavens. It had the appearance of Romulus, and it approached Julius and said, "Go and tell my people that it is the will of the gods that Rome shall be the greatest city of the world. Let them be brave and warlike, and no human power shall be able to conquer them." Afterwards, the Romans worshipped Romulus as a god. They worshipped him under the name
Quirinus,
which was one of the names of the god Mars, and they built a temple to him on a hill, which was called the Quirinal Hill.